Hello and welcome everybody to another vlog where I talk openly and candidly about my depression. Now, a slight change up in circumstances because the weather here in the Netherlands has turned extremely cold, below minus, and it's just too cold for me to risk going out on the bike given my recent health issues. Okay, so to get into it, you're probably wondering from the title of this video, surely we covered that in the intro where I discussed my depression and some of the causes behind it. But we didn't really go into detail. And what I want to do in this episode is just reflect on a comment that was made to me not too long ago, when I was asked by a friend, and these are his words, not mine, "What the fuck have you got to be depressed about?" So we'll cover my responses more in detail later in the series. Now, this wasn't easy. It's a very emotional subject. The question sort of took me a bit by surprise, and if I'm really honest, it quite angered me. So what I'm going to do is later in the series I will go into the causes in more depth. But basically the rundown went something like this. I'm one of 9 children, and because my father left when I was a youngster, I spent the majority of my childhood in care along with many of my siblings. But that's not the full story. Try to imagine that you're one of 9 children, and then try to imagine the fact that you've never even seen some of those siblings. And that remains the case today. There are certain members of my family that I've never even seen. And if I'm honest, I don't even know if they're alive or dead now. But add on to that the fact that being put into the care system from a very early age, and I think the effect that this had on me later is something which we'll go more into detail with. Now, along with being separated from my brothers and sisters, the care system, I think it could fairly be said, was not very kind to me. I was repeatedly abused, both physically and sexually, over many years while in the care system. And that had huge effect on my behaviour going into my teens. And if I hadn't joined the military way back at the age of 21, I think I would have just spiralled out of control. It was joining the military that gave me a lot of things, but the easy ones to list are respect for others, comradeship. I was very good at sports, and self-respect, I suppose. We will cover those years in more detail throughout the series, but moving forward, I suppose the other thing to throw into the mix was having cancer. First of all, as a child, and then later in 2005 when I got prostate cancer. I really struggled with the disease. I was married at the time to Caroline, and when she also got breast cancer in 2007, it was a very difficult period in my life. I suppose you could say I could cope with my own illness, but having to try and be strong for Caroline as well, who wasn't coping very well herself. And in fact, when the disease returned in 2009, she completely gave up fighting. But that's one of the other reasons why my depression surfaces with really dark thoughts about that period, because Caroline in 2009 was given 12 to 18 months to live, and actually died 9 weeks later. And that just didn't give us the time to plan, to do the things we wanted to do together, and it crushed me completely. And if I'm honest, that's the period of time when the depression was at its very worst. But it didn't get any easier even then. 2 days after Caroline died, there was a knock on the door, and 2 women police officers were stood there, and I just knew it was going to be bad news. And in fact, I actually said to them, please don't give me any more bad news. But sadly, they informed me that Shirley, my only remaining sister, or the only one I know to be alive, had died alone and on her own. And yeah, again, that just I just collapsed once more. I was already in a deep hole, and of all the family members, I think you could safely say Shirley and myself. Shirley was 1 year older than me, the next sister in line, so we were very close. And the other member of my family I'm very close with was Martin, my younger brother by 1 year. And there'll be more stories about the two of them later. But I found Shirley's death incredibly difficult to accept, on top of just losing Caroline, as you can probably imagine. Now, during that period, there was a lot going on. I'd previously lost my IT job, which I'd had for more than 12 years, because of taking so much time out with both my own and Caroline's illness. And I think it was in 2008 I decided to spend the total sum of my redundancy on photography equipment. And I actually did a good job of becoming a professional photographer. The banks wouldn't give me a loan, so I set up the business using my redundancy, taking a huge gamble. But within a year, from 2008 to 2009, this was before Caroline passed away, I had a very, very successful photography business and actually won some awards. So that was all right. It was tough dealing with the illnesses, but it was also a period where we were enjoying ourselves. But when Caroline passed, I slunk into a huge depression. While I continued to take on some assignments, I was letting a lot slip. And during the period 2009 to 2012, I made a lot of decisions which I'm really not very proud of. And I think you could blame the depression, but you could also blame the fact that I just wasn't interested. I just couldn't get interested in doing anything worthwhile. And that's a result of the depression. But in October 2012, I was informed that my own cancer had returned, and that this time I probably had 12 months to live. So I told the oncologist I was going to see how far I could cycle around the world. And so in October 2012, I sold my house, my business, the photography business. I sold my car. I gave all my possessions to charity, and I set off cycling around the world. By the time I'd paid all the bills, I think I had something like £5,000 left, which I had to be extremely careful with, because that wasn't going to last long when you take into account the different visas and permits I would need, the flying that I would need to do. But I'll go more into that story later, because I actually found a very unique way of making those funds spread out, and in fact even adding to them. But that's for another story, and that's for another day. So we're up to 2012, me setting off around the world, and I'm going to end this story there, because I think that's enough for now. If I'm honest, I'm struggling a bit to hold back the emotions, and so if you've got this far, thanks for your support. Please hit that like button, and if you're not a subscriber, subscribe. It will help the channel grow. And as I said in my intro, I genuinely believe that by talking openly and candidly about what happened to me, I'll be able to help others. And we'll embellish on these stories in future episodes, and there'll be a lot of fun as well. So stick with it. Hopefully, if the temperatures return to normal here, I can get out on the bike, but I just daren't risk it at the moment. Anyway, that's it, folks. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.